Welcome back to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. This is Juliette Hahn here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Yeah. I'm in peace or I don't know. Yeah.
Yes. So I want the listeners to appreciate this because you just, which they heard last week, or maybe it was even 2 weeks ago, the event that the Sopel Foundation put on that was huge and incredible and amazing. And then you moved like the next day and are still getting on and recording. So I just want the listeners to appreciate that. So he is in his new space. That's you have been going and going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it 2 weeks? No, it's
I don't know.
10 days ago, isn't it?
Well, that's kind of 2 weeks, isn't it? 2 weekends ago.
Kind of 2 weeks. Yeah. 17th.
So this is actually perfect because this is going to take us into the talk today, which is ADHD. And we have something called time blindness. I have word blindness and time blindness. Thank God I can fucking see with my eyes because there's a lot of other blind things that go on.
Yeah, sure. You can.
And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because I've had a lot of epiphanies around my ADHD, the shame that I've had, and I hate to even say it because I know I'm an evolved, confident woman. But yeah, keep laughing. But, and I know we've talked pieces about it and we've gotten into it a little bit, but there's been more things that kind of just have really come up that I was like, this is an important one because of the negative dyslexia. All these different things have this negative connotation. Did I say that right?
Very good.
I'm having a hard time pronouncing words today. They have a lot of negative connotations. And, dyslexia, oh, you're dumb because you can't do this, right? ADHD. When you say, now I want you to go back before you understood ADHD. When someone said ADHD, what did you picture?
What did I picture?
Yeah, like what kind of person did you picture?
Obviously there's two types, right? There's an idiot like me that bounces off the wall. And that's why I call it ADHD 1 and 2. 1 is bouncing off the wall. Like everybody analogy, you say ADHD. Again, ADD is the old term. ADHD, everybody automatically thinks is a kid bouncing off the wall. Can't pay attention. No, not right. And I'm gonna leave number 2 to you to explain because this is why we're having this conversation today.
Right. So, well, there's a couple other things. So I was the ADHD, as you said, idiot, right? So like there's that word, but I was the ADHD boy, but I was the girl. And I wasn't diagnosed until college.
Well, and let's preface that, there's 2 types. That's why I always say 1 and 2. As, 1, I use all of these, bouncing off the wall, right? And that is very prevalent and more prevalent in boys than girls. Because you just said I was the boy or the girl, right? So
yeah.
It's not the idiot. We're bouncing off the wall. We can't sit still, jittering, playing with things. That's 1. And it's like, we have pens and we got little paper and spidgets and so yeah. That's 1. And that is very prevalent in boys. Number 2 is daydreaming. And that's very prevalent in girls. And that's why ADHD is the most misdiagnosed learning disorder in girls / women in the world. Because if you take a look at it, it's always the boys that can bounce around. They always talk about school. The girls can sit, right? The girls can sit, but can they pay attention? Are they daydreaming? Are they in another world? Are they time lapse, as you just mentioned, as we got on here? Just time just completely fly by without paying any attention. That's everything that comes with daydreaming. That's ADHD too.
Yeah. And I knew it as ADHD and then ADD, the hypo. So hypo and hyper. So my older sister was the hypo. She would like leave shoes. Like my mom, one day she's like, you have one shoe on. Like, how could you leave a shoe? She was the daydreamer. She was the one that looked out the window. She was the one that was like creative. And as we would say, like flighty women and like, oh, you're such a ditz. Are you a blonde? Right. All of those things. I was not that. I was the typical boy, but wasn't diagnosed until later. So all I constantly heard all the time. And because my mom was a teacher, right? The boy that was the close talker that couldn't, control their body, that was like in your face and eh. And so I was always very aware, even though I probably as a kid was that like my aunts and uncles, like, I would be climbing on them, hugging them, laughing, making jokes, like never stopped, right? Never stopped ever. Ran into the ocean before I could swim, jumped into an elevator at like a department store in the city with my mom having all 5 kids. Cause I was like, I didn't sit still. So I was constantly, you're too much, you're too loud. I would enter a room and boom, like it was that. And so I was very conscious of it. But now that we are older and these different things. So I loved how I know you said, I'm going to let you, kind of speak at. This is kind of a two-folded reason why I wanted to talk about this. It's come a lot of stuff from me, but then family members, and then just at a talk in New Jersey, and a mom coming up and thanking me for sharing my story because her teenager's going through this. And then we kind of dug even a little deeper, and I said to you, we really need to talk about this because there's so much, and there's so much, one of the things, well, and this is, I'm going to go back for a second, but in school, when the kid is the spaz, a teacher tells the parents, you need to medicate them. Mm-hmm. And it's the first thing. So I was always very aware, because I remember my mom never told names, but like, oh, this, the kid left her class, because my mom handled kids really well because of her her kids. She handled the kids really well. So anyone that had anything slightly different, or they knew to get my mom, because she was going to help that kid blossom. She was going to see the kid. She was going to help them. She was going to let them move around. She wasn't going to sit them in the seat and tell them to pay attention and sit, because we need to move around. We need to move. We need to rock. We need to stand up. We need to do all these things for our brain to fire. And one of the things that we know now is you need the brain to fire. You also, as you've talked about as a coach, you need to put your hand on the shoulder. You need to talk. There's all these different things. But when someone has no understanding, just like we talk about all the time with dyslexia and dysgraphia and dyscalculia, ADHD, a lot of times when you have learning disabilities, you also have the ADHD part. And sometimes in an education setting, it's really hard to determine, is it the dyslexia getting in your way? Is it the ADHD getting in your way? Is it the dysgraphia getting in your way? Is it dyscalculia getting in your way? So when I was diagnosed in college, I was relieved, but then ashamed right away. I went on meds because that was what you did. And I started doing really well in school. And I was like, well, wait a second. Okay, I'm not dumb. That feels great. But I need to take a medicine to be able to function. And then I had all of this shame. And I think we did talk about this once, but if we didn't, I really haven't talked about it. And I still get very uncomfortable. But because the meds that I was on offset other things in my body, then I had to take an antidepressant because I didn't have the depressive part. And to me, back when we were growing up, right, if you were depressed, there was something wrong with you. And I don't know if it was something I heard in my family or there was some person in the neighbor like, oh, they can't control their emotions. Like depression wasn't something that was looked at as, oh, let's support and help. And it wasn't like negative, but there was a negative thing around it. So it wasn't like, okay, you have it. So I also was like, oh my God, that means I'm not strong emotionally. I'm not a strong person because I can't control my emotions. So then I had to go on a different med. And that was like embarrassing. Like I hated having to go get my prescription. I hated, like, I remember dating someone and being like, oh my God, I got to take my medicine in the morning. I don't want them to see it. Like, and that was like a really weird time in my life. And so then when my kids were going through school, I was like, and then I found homeopathy and we know that story and it was great. But for my kids, I definitely was like, I'm not medicating you because I don't know what, like, I know what it did to me, and I want you to be able to know your body. But then there's times where I'm like, did I hinder them? Like, did I hinder them from being good in school? Because I know that it made me good in school. So it's this whole mind fuck.
This whole thing, it's all mind fucked, right? That's all we do is mind fuck ourselves every day, all day long. And that's why I always talk about relatability so much. That's why I talk about, understanding so much. Then you don't mind fuck yourself. You mind fuck yourself is when you're trying to figure it out. You're going down the rabbit hole that I love going down. It's funny as a kid growing up, and we talk about this, is I don't remember the word depression. I don't remember. Again, so much of my childhood is black. I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember a thing. So, even growing up, when you hear, you're talking about hearing the word, somebody's depressed. I never heard any of that. No, I don't remember any of that. I don't know. And obviously, we talk about this on here is anyone, something's black, it's protecting yourself from it, right from the trauma around it. So as we've talked on here, and clearly I get a lot of black shit for a reason. Right now, it'd be interesting to see kind of where you heard that.
I'll tell you, I know,
because I don't know. I don't remember a kid. I don't remember anybody going to the nurse's office. I don't remember anybody talking about ADHD, like dyslexia, for an example. I didn't hear that word till I was tested when I found out. So what was I, 32, 33, 34? I had no idea. Never heard the word before.
Right.
Along with everything else that came, dysgraphic, ADHD. That was the first time that I've heard the word. It was dumped on me like a freight train.
Yeah. And because my mom was in education, and so I don't know if it was like, and again, my mom wasn't like, she didn't talk about kids in a bad way, but I remember her, parents, oh, there's that mom that's forgetting the library book, or, oh, that poor kid because of this. And so I definitely, because of how intuitive and I felt emotions, I kept those things in my head, right? I didn't want to be that mom, right? Remember we talked about how I was like so scheduled with the kids, and everyone was like, what the fuck's happening? You were like such a free spirit. Now you're like so controlled. But it's because the only way I knew how to survive, because I knew it was going to either be a free for all, or they were going to be really behaved kids, or it was going to be a shit show. So I had to go with that. But that's also some things. And my mom's dad probably was depressed. And I think there probably was discussions about it. He was a career military guy. And I loved my pop up. Like I always would just sit next to him and
pop up.
Yeah. And that's what my dad is, a pop up too.
What is that?
You didn't hear that? That's a mom and pop up, or nanny and pop up was its grandparents. Pop up. Yeah, my dad's pop up as well. And it could be also like when my dad left, it could be some of the conversations like, oh, he could, like there's definitely some things that were conversations, and not negative, but like, or I shouldn't say that, not like gossipy, but maybe just in conversations. And I could hear everything. I knew what was going on because I could hear everything. And so I think that there was some of that. But my grandfather used to come home and he would sit at the table and have beer. And that's what he would do. And he didn't talk a lot. He was 100% Irish. He had a tough life. His parents died when he was young, and he raised his siblings. And he had a tough life. Then he had 7 kids in 5 years. I mean, they had 2 sets of twins a year apart. Like, I mean, he was in every war. They lived in Germany. Yeah. He had a life.
Yeah.
And so he 100% Irish. And lost his parents was young. You didn't talk about how you felt. You drank it.
Oh, no, Irish or kebabin or jobbing or whatever. Right. Back in the day, nobody did. Right.
Right.
And that's, part of the problem is that, everybody's like, oh, this is what I did as a kid. Right. I did this, or, I think we've talked about here, tough love. Tough love to a dyslexic is tough death, right? So and that's why a lot of these conversations are very new, right? Because do as I say, don't do as I do, right? My dad, go buy me packs of smokes, right? Go, here's my note, go buy me 2 packs of Players Light regular. Here's, go buy me cases of beer, right? We would never do that to our kids now, right? That's not how it works. So what was said and how things were said and done, when you and I grew up, it's a different world now.
It's a different world. Yeah.
It's, and go back to Pop-Up, where I went with that is that he didn't talk about it, right? Obviously a guy like that who's been part of the wars, like, you don't understand what that all means.
Totally.
Until you've been there. And I haven't been there. I've got a lot of friends, and I spend a lot of time with them, and the PTSD and things like that. So we can never. So not surprising he drank it, not talked about at all.
Right.
And the way the generation was right now. I mean, this is how I grew up. This is how, drinking of the holes in the front lawn, and now you can't, and cell phones, and ride your bike, be back before dark, right? Obviously, things are different, and this part of this is too. But different is, it is what it is. You can't. You want to compare good or bad, whatever it really is what it is. You can't. You're not going to change it. But the way you change things is understanding.
Yes, so true.
And I repeat myself with relatability, right? I remember when you first started stalking me, and Wedding Crashers, stage 5 clinger. Stage 5.
Okay, how
get out of here? Stage 5.
So now you're just going to pepper that in every single time.
But there's words I always said, and you're like, relatability is one of them, right?
Yeah.
How many people have in our time together that we talk? How did Brent do that? How did he talk to my kid? And I always make a joke. Yeah, I talk to dyslexic. No, we understand each other. It's the little things. It's relatability. It's the understanding. If you don't understand yourself, meaning if you had ADHD or you have dyslexia or one of the 5 Ds, you'll never fully understand someone who has it, right? So it's we talk about this the way we do, and obviously you've come a long ways and you've learned a lot about. Now you can look back and put these together, and what your family did a few weeks ago brought up more things, and you can't heal and move on and grow without understanding.
Mm-hmm. And it's so true. And it was like, as you said, like, if you think about it, it's the boy that, right, is the troublemaker. That was the ADHD kid when we were growing up. And you didn't hear the word, but like, it was always like,
yeah.
And I was always put with them. So it was like, even back then when I wasn't, but it was like, okay, I always was with the troublemaking boys. And it's because I was more of the talkative. So like, I didn't disrupt in the same way as I guess some of the boys in my class, but I was always in trouble for talking, not paying attention, and not doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Well, that's why you get that hat of, I need attention.
I like attention.
Okay.
Not need attention. I like attention.
But, now is it easier to diagnose or see one of us? 100%. So in a sense, it was easier for you being recognized that way. And I'll explain, elaborate on that. Right. Does any of that easier? No, but that's easier than being the girl. That's why it's the number one misdiagnosed thing, right? Sitting in that chair, daydreaming.
Yep.
We all have traumas, childhood traumas from, if you have any learning disorders, we have childhood traumas. And that doesn't necessarily mean everything. We all have bullied. we're all misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look back and, kind of dig into a little bit of that conversation from Jersey, that that parent came in.
Yeah. Talked about, I can't say the word, so ODD.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even try to say it.
No, now you got me. ODD, oppositional defiance disorder.
Yeah. So that's like, right, 40%. So, and I love that you brought it up with the girls, because that is, and this is where girls then in teenage years, because a lot of times with hormones, it then
you guys are crazy anyways.
Exasperates. And then when you have hormone fluctuations, as we've talked about in my perimenopause, when I realized what the fuck is happening, my ADD is all out of control. It's hormones, right? So those affect. And so if you're not aware of it, that's also where women run into things, because it's like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? There's something wrong with me because this stuff is happening. So for a girl, especially girls with and I shouldn't say especially, but high IQs, where people expect all these things, they put this pressure on themselves to be at this level because they're smart. They're working really hard. They study for hours. We talk about the dyslexic, right? That gets the really good grades because they're working until 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure that they're ready for that test. Those things are not normal. Those things are not normal, and that comes with some of this, what we're talking about, right? Because you become a perfectionist. As you said, there's no such thing as perfectionist. Why are you being a perfectionist? It's because you know that you have to study a certain way, and it's beautiful if you figure it out, but then you're putting so much work in.
It's beautiful if you figure it out. I don't agree with that. At what cost?
Well, right. I was going to let you, right. At what cost? And this is where, if it's not caught and then you go to college and then you're like, I want to go further on because I'm working hard. And then that's where the pressure and then the self-esteem and then the anxiety comes. And that's where then the stuffing and then possibly the drinking and possibly the drugs. That's where it really can go, because it's like you're trying to maintain and hold it all together. And then obviously not all of us can hold it together. No one can hold it together all the time. You
crack,
blow up. You crack. Exactly. You crack and you blow up. And when does that happen? So for a girl, and we'll keep, kind of posted on this, but we have some things that we're dealing with in the house again, which is all great because we have understanding and recognition. Right. But I remember my sister Elizabeth, when she was diagnosed with the hypo, the ADD, the daydreaming, and she's like, oh my gosh, yes. She also has all the other Ds except dyspraxia, the pressure she put on herself. And we talked about this, where if a teacher called her retarded for reading out loud, that would have crushed her. Oh. She would have went inside and yes, did it crush me in a certain way? Yes, but I still stood up for myself, yelled at the teacher, was like, go fuck yourself, right? And ran down. That's a different, and that's just, those are just two different people. But if you think about a girl that is constantly trying to stay ahead of herself, trying to keep up, trying to do, and especially if there's not especially, but there's also ADD with no learning disabilities. That's the other thing. There's some people just have ADHD. It's a processing thing. And so it doesn't, also they're like, well, you're really good in school. But again, how hard are you working behind the scenes?
Yeah.
To maintain it.
If somebody's working somebody always said, oh, he's, he or she's a hard worker, studying, okay, let's just say, somebody's normal kid is working or studying 2 hours. We're studying 6. Now, that's an extra 4 hours of stress, anxiety, trauma-based. So it's, he or she's such a hard worker. There's a very fine line between working smart and trauma.
Yep.
And you've got people, like myself for hockey, I think I was the only person in professional hockey never take a nap, right? Figured out a couple of years ago that why I didn't do it. The more tired I was, but that was the less it worked, right? So it's, you get some people that are trying to keep everything in tight. They try and keep everything, right. As you said, when you had kids, everything is so regimented,
controlled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got control of it right now. If I let go of a crack of it, I don't know if I'd ever get it back. And that, in our head, we don't know if we can get that back.
Yep.
The same thing as, in the addiction world, right? Have one sip of alcohol, or if you're alcoholic, you may never come back. So you get the desperate housewives, white picket fence, everything is perfect. Everything's perfect. I feel sorry for them, right?
Yeah.
Because trying to live like that isn't fun. They put on a face, right? That's not fun.
No. And it's, and it's so interesting because when you say that, it's like, so where I raised the kids, it was very white picket fenced, and I didn't care if I let my kids dress themselves. I was like, you guys take my kids were all.
I went to the kindergarten with no underwear. They called home.
Penelope never, right? She never, the boys never, right? I was like, you guys dress yourself. I don't care if you mismatch. And it's an interesting thing. It was more on their schedules that I was so tightly wound, like the nap schedule, the time for bed, like this is dinner. This is like, oh, we're in our routine. This is like, we read books. Oh my God. I was so routine. And as I said, Dan and I just recently talked about this, and he's like, it was really hard for him. He's like, but I knew that I couldn't change it because I knew then it wouldn't have been okay for you. Like you wouldn't have been able to adjust. And so it was like, this is how you have to be. And I want to go back to the ODD.
Oh yeah. We skipped over that. Yeah.
No, we didn't. I was going to get back. Don't you worry. Because it was saying that 40% of kids with ADHD also are diagnosed with ODD. And you said something back in the day. And a lot of times, and so this is what I want people to understand. This is our theory. We are not saying that this is, but our theories, if you really think about them and then and watch and change your mindset, they're usually right.
Yeah, look at you.
But really, I mean, really.
Oh, you don't have to tell me.
No, I know. You're like, no, I know this. But seriously, they really are, if you really stop and think about it and lay it out. And it makes sense if you just let your mind be like, okay, this is what we're taught in the medical world. This is what we're taught in the education world. Here's reality. This is what we're talking about, is the reality of it. The reality of it and our theories go hand in hand. So I was talking to a woman, she was saying her daughter also had ODD, and she was saying what a tough time they're in right now. She's a teenager. And I said to her, and this is something you brought up, and I was like, that makes so much sense. And you're right. Like I never thought of it that way, really, probably. Maybe it's crossed my mind, but I never stopped to really like dissect it. There's an ODD is an anger, right? And when you're a child, that that things are different all the time. Like, early on, we've broken down kids. Like, there's something different. If you're the kid, myself, that, right, was constantly told, and I wasn't constantly told, but in school, like, oh, quiet down, stop doing this, stop doing that. You get pissed, right? And as I said, I yelled at the teacher, right? So they might have diagnosed me with ODD back then. I really wasn't doing other things, but that's because of things that keep happening, that then that person is like, well, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. And no one's listening to me. No one is seeing me, and no one's here to help me. And that, I think, is a really big thing. You're a little kid in school, whether you have any of the 5 Ds, but we're talking about ADHD right now. So you're that kid, either the daydreamer or the kid that's, off the walls, and you're constantly being told how annoying you are, really, or that you're not focusing, and you're, oh my God. Kids can feel when people don't like them. Like it's not kids can feel it. They can feel when a teacher doesn't like them, when a parent's frustrated with them. We know people through the foundation. Like, you can see when a mom is like, oh my God, my kids are driving me crazy. Those kids can fucking feel it. And what they do is they then attach to you more. And they don't know that they're doing it, but then they attach to you more and get under your feet more and annoy you more. And it's like, so these kids are being told all the time, or they're feeling that they're less than, they're not enough, they're annoying. Go ahead.
No, it's a safe place. They don't have it, right? Kids just want to be loved,
right,
and understood. And if you're not that at school, then you're going to be that even more at home. And if you're not that at home, things are going to get expedited, and they're going to get worse. Is that a divorce going on at home? Is that a not good relationship? Is that a single parent home? Like, there's so many things that come into play, but the kid just wants to be loved. And, when they don't have that place, for me, it was going to school was 8 hours a day in that electric chair. It was awful. So to come home and not have that same, not have that love and understanding at home, those wheels just keep spinning and they get deeper. And then that's when ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, comes into play.
Good. Well done.
Yeah. I have to think about that. And I think it's, it's a made up term in my mind, there's change. They're
kids
not
pissed
happy.
off.
Yeah. Kids pissed off. Did his friend down the street move? Did parents get divorced? Did, grandma died? Like, there's something there. So it's handling the situation better, understanding it better. I had a kid that I was coaching a number of years ago. As soon as the parents told me that what was going on, I told my coaching staff, this is how we handle it. Parents got divorced. Now they're both remarried and both have another kid. A lot of things were going on with the kid. He got diagnosed with ODD. So what I did was I changed all our coaching staff, was positive. Everything was positive. Everything was positive. Everything was positive. First half of the year, whatever it was we're having a lot of problems with them. As soon as we turned the other way, kid went like this. Took off.
Because you understood him and you met him and you made him feel seen and heard, and like that his emotions were okay.
Right. And, we didn't really have any more emotions. Because he felt in a place where he didn't need them almost. It's just a scream for, me. Look at me. Love me. They're not feeling loved. They're feeling hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then the longer you go, the worse it gets. And then, and you were saying that, when you're in Jersey, I think was it Princeton you said?
Yeah.
Teenage now is really tough. Yeah, because it's been you have teenage years of
teenagers. You're just pissed off in general.
Oh my God. Then top on being a girl. Jesus, you guys are whack jobs. Anyways, and then add that in. So you got, if the girl's 16, you've got 15 years of the kid being, first year, all you're doing is sleeping, sucking on mommy's breast, yummy, and changing diapers, shitting diapers. So 15 years of traumas, and then now you put them as a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. And think of us as parents. Go ahead, finish.
No, I could go on about, it's, again, understanding. That's all that's all we all want to do. We talk about this every day on here is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
If you can understand your son or daughter, if you can be there to advocate for your son and daughter, you can't advocate for your son and daughter, if you don't understand. And you've got a lot of, now, here in the U.S. and with Department of Ed, and they're trying to, the public system and private and parents know best. I'm not sure about that.
Right. And think about, and here's the thing, we're not saying like, we know so many parents are holding on by a thread, right? We understand that. And so when you have multiple kids or a kid is out of sorts, I mean, just even having 2 years apart, if someone's out of sorts, everything's out of sorts. So then if like another kid falls out of line, you're like, oh my God, right? And you don't really have time or patience to be like, okay, let me figure this out. What's going on? However, if you do, it actually can solve so many problems in the long run. And it's hard to stop. I've been in it. I know. So again, we're not calling anyone out saying anyone's done anything wrong, because we're all doing the best that we can.
100%.
But if we can give you a little tools just to be like, well, wait a second, because one of the things, and I've talked to multiple parents, with kids that are elementary school age, and they're like, yeah, the teachers are saying that they need to be medicated. And it's like, oh my God, it's because the teachers can't handle it. And this is what they're supposed to do. And again, I don't want to be a teacher, because that is a big job. And when you have multiple kids and behavior problems, as we talk about, there's no such thing as behavior problems. There's no such thing as the bully, class clown, the kid that they're looking for attention. And we need to find out why they're looking for attention. Is it they're struggling at school? Is there something going on at home? Is there something going on in school, socially? There's so many different things. And that kid is just being like, okay, no one cares. No one cares. No one cares that I'm acting out, right? They're going to put a label and then be more strict. And that doesn't help, because then you're extra pissed off, especially if you're a fiery personality. We just talked about it. If you're a fiery personality, it's really hard just to be like, okay, I'm just going to sit and take it. So we have to take all of that into account. Now, for a teacher, that's really hard, especially a teacher that has their own families and are dealing with it. That takes a very special person, and it's not easy. But the more that we can meet that kid and find out what is going on, and let them know we understand, and we hear them, and we see them, and we feel them, the less of this shit is going to happen. I mean, if we think about it now, they say, oh, there's so many more kids having so much more issues. Well, let's look at it. Why? It's not because social media and the phones, like, come on. Like, yeah, maybe that for some kids, that's a problem, but it's the fact that so many people are hurting and suffering and trying to survive. And these kids are getting shoved under a rug.
And I don't buy all that social media, and cell phones. Now they're trying to ban cell phones in certain schools, in places. That's only going to make things fucking worse. Everything in life is self-esteem, right? So now if you take a look at it, adults are in the worst shape they've ever been, right? And how many, whatever percentage aren't getting help for them, right? So who's it fall upon? Kids, right?
Yeah.
So kids are in the worst shape that they've ever been. Is it cell phones? Absolutely not. Is it social media? Absolutely not. They want to point fingers at all that. That ain't going to change. That ain't going to change it. It's self-esteem. Right now, if the parents are in the worst shape, who's it fall on? Kids are kids are too smart for their own good.
Yep.
Way too smart for their own good. And this is what we're talking about right now is kids know when they're not liked. They know when they don't fit in. You take a look at and the behavior. Take a look what I did for hockey. No naps. Like, I didn't know why until a couple of years ago. So I was 45 years old. I did it at pro hockey for 18 years. I didn't know why. You just figure out ways to do it. You don't know why. Like, is it structured? Like, you're structured. You knew you did it this way. You don't know why. You didn't know why, did you?
No, until just recently. No, just right. Yeah. Now, until we were having these conversations, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. That's why, because I didn't want it, because I'm all or nothing. It would have been a free for all, or it was structured. My kids were very well behaved, really good kids, because they took their naps. We were consistent. They ate good food. But I could have had it where, like, now they always laugh at me because they're like, God, you're like so not strict anymore. And I'm like, yeah, because I did my fucking job then. Now it's your time to like step up.
And that's so we know we're different. We know we don't fit in. We know we're not liked. We know that we don't connect. We know all these things at a young age. We may not know what all that means till later. And that's why we have these conversations. Kids are way too smart for their own good. They know they don't connect. They know they don't have friends. They can't read. They're not sharing. They know all these things. They don't know why. And they're searching for it.
Yep. And that they can't focus, and that they can't pay attention, and the teacher's talking and they're thinking of something else. Now,
and don't ask a parent, just tell me what you see.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
So, and yes, I think attention has gotten worse, attention spans, because of tech and high speed things. Yes. And I do think that there are, like, maybe if someone's on their phone for 24 hours a day, days a week, that it does do something a little bit to their brain. So I'm not saying, like, I agree with you, but don't agree with you in certain things. But the problems that are in schools are not because of cell phones. Maybe the kids' attention spans are a little shorter because it's like everything's a little faster. But we just need to also pick things up and change fucking the way that we're teaching. Like, this is evolution, right? This is evolution.
Right now, right? But how good does it feel to get that answer now?
So good.
Try finding and never getting the answer.
I know. Oh my God. Right? I love that you just said that.
So again, I'll fight back on all that, right?
Yeah.
As a kid, if we're struggling, if we can get the answer by a text, by Googling something, finding it out, how good does that feel? It's self-esteem. I found the answer.
Instead of having to go look through the fucking dictionary and encyclopedia. Oh my God.
Right.
Oh.
So there's so much that goes with all that, right? It's right. Yes. Can you scroll on like fucking all the videos and TikTok and all? Yes. And watch and laugh, and laugh and find out different things. You're consuming information, right? You didn't get it, as a kid. Yeah. You never, we never got it, right? I remember when I first came to the U.S. when I turned pro when I was like 19. I bought some CDs and I came back, and I think I was 20 years old at that time, and I'm playing them. It hadn't made it to the Canada yet. People are like, "What is this?" I've got the CD. I got CDs. Yes, CDs, and
I just had to throw a bunch away.
CDs.
I found all my CDs. Okay, that's a whole other story.
You didn't sit in there and play them and cry and reminisce. But it's
I saved some.
That information hadn't gotten to Canada yet. Those songs hadn't got to Canada. It was, we were 6 or 8 months behind. Right. Yeah. So that isn't there. Like, they've got more information. It's accessible now. AI, they're finding ways. They're finding ways around it. Is the phone cause problem? Yeah. Do they have the social means? No, they don't need to. Yeah. That's not how the world's built now. Right. But it all comes down to feeling good about, oh, Elizabeth, she scrolls on her phone, she finds this deal for $10.99 on Amazon. She's like, yeah, this thing's awesome. Instead of going and spend $40 or $50 at Costco, it's self-esteem.
Yep. No, and I do hear, because I have this argument with people, because I do agree also. It's like, if the kid's not doing anything else, is what I'm talking about, and they're just holed up and they're just doing that, like, and maybe not watching the good, happy, good stuff, like depressive stuff, like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, hold up is one thing, is because guess what? How many of us are holed up because you don't connect? You don't have that person. Right. You don't have that friend, right? No kid is ever holed up if they have connections.
Exactly. No, I'm 100%. And I think what you're saying is also, again, for parents to stop and think, because we all do, like, if you think, I mean, this is what's so crazy. If you think of all the science, like, you should be eating more wheat. Oh, wait, wheat's bad for you. You should be doing this. Oh, wait, that's bad for you. There's always something that is bad for us that we have been doing because we were told to. And this is what I laugh every single time. I'm like, oh, wait, now it's not good to have 2 glasses of red wine. They told you to do that for your heart, right? And then all of a sudden it switched. And then, oh, 1 cup of coffee is really good for you. Now it's not. Like, you have to do what feels good for you and do it. And I'm not going to say do it in moderation, because I hate it when people would say that to me, because I don't do anything in moderation. It's either all or nothing. But you have to, as you said, like, if you can explore and do things that are good for your brain. So think about a kid sitting there that has this creative mind. They're totally attention deficit, and they're made to sit in a chair and not move. Like, no one should be doing that, period. And the evolution of all of the tech and all the things that you just were talking about, school hasn't done any of that. And it's so mind-boggling. And then we're like, oh, wait, kids are in the worst state of their lives. Yeah, because everything else has moved on. Everything, tech and all of these things are so big now, but you're fucking teaching them the same stupid shit that you were teaching us that we don't even need to know. Who the fuck needs to know algebra? I don't know, because unless you're a fucking math teacher, or like some of these sciences, yeah, they're interesting and great, but if you're not going to be a scientist, does it really fucking matter if I know what rock is over there, like by the Earth, moon? Who the fuck cares?
And Christopher Columbus, all that shit's made up.
Well, now they say that. They're like, they do, right?
It's 100% made up. You tell me who saw Christopher Columbus. You tell me where they wrote it, on a fucking rock. Like, would they have ballpoint pens, lifelong ballpoint pens? And he came across, and they kept this fucking journal in the special safe that only had the code back in the 20th century. Bullshit. It's all made up. It's all made up bullshit, because when do you guys think you guys evolved? I don't know. What year did this country come about?
And don't ask me history.
I don't either. I don't get bullshit, right? Because who was around?
I don't need to know. Why do I need to know?
We got a chirping bird. When, Grandma? 1776. So who was around in 1776? Oh, I do
know that. I actually do know that.
Pens? Was there binders with fucking loose leaf? Like, where did they write this? Tell me.
I love that Elizabeth just yelled that, because the 17. I did know that, because Hamilton.
You clearly did not. I asked you the question.
Now I know, but now that she just said it, I was like, oh right, I know from the songs, not from history class.
No, everybody knows this.
Yeah, I mean, we're taught in school it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you probably weren't, because you weren't taught in America. Well, I don't know what Canadians are doing.
Who cares about what the fuck? What happened over there with the Greek islands? I don't give a fuck about the Greek islands in a 22nd century AD. What do you mean? How do you know ADA? Like, nobody's around.
Right, but there are people that are fascinated. I mean, some antiques and stuff, I think, are interesting. Whatever. Now we're having an attention deficit moment.
No, we're not attention. We're attention focused. And it's bullshit.
I want to talk about time blindness really quickly, because that is something
should we bring in a special guest?
I know, who hasn't really
over there.
So time blindness is an actual thing. It's when we think that we can fit more things into the time. So I used to always be really early or 5 minutes late. Like, I was never like the hour, but like I would rush like a mad person, and then have like And I just did it recently when I was going to New Jersey. I was like, oh my God, I haven't done this in a really long time. And I hate this feeling, but this is how I used to live all the time. I used to live in a state of rushing all the time.
And that's my anxiety of showing up on time or late.
Yeah.
Again, for me, obviously, where I grew up is, my dad was like, if you're not 15 minutes or but I was always that kid, right? The dumb kid, right? The lazy kid, as a teacher. Dumb, stupid, and lazy, 3 words the teacher always used, right? So if if you're already that kid, now you're showing up late. Now you're even more that kid. You spend your life trying to blend in, not stand out.
Right. And I used to run into rooms late.
And then you stand out even more, right? It's like you're walking into the room with a big drum on your chest, right? Here I am, right? And there's facts relayed for a party is one thing, but when you're walking into a room, a meeting, we spend our lives trying to fit in, and every time we're late, it just takes us back to all those days, and we didn't.
Yeah. So that is still something that I work on all the time, because it is, I have zero sense. And I think this is also part of dyscalculia. Like, I have zero sense of time. I don't know what you can do in an hour versus I will even be like, oh, I can get there and get back. And I have to check with Dan a lot of times to be like, am I? And he's like, no. He's like, that's 3 hours. I was like, oh, I thought I could do that in an hour. Okay, damn it. But even traveling, I'm like, okay, I have all these trips coming up. I can do all this. And I literally went to go, and I was like, you know what? I need to sit with him, because I think I can fit 1,000 things into a very short time. Or I go the other way where it's like, oh wait, now I can't. Well, no, I actually could. One of the things podcasting has gotten me way better, like the sense of what 5 minutes is. Because I used to rush when I had guests when I did my first podcast. I remember I would rush and be like, oh my God. Oh wait, I still have 5 minutes. Okay. And then I would sit and wait. And 5 minutes is actually, you can get a lot done in 5 minutes. So I've gotten way better, but I'm also 51. And it just happened the last couple of years. So, but that is a huge attention deficit thing, being disorganized. Even though I am organized in my own disorganization, I know where everything is, but I need to have everything out. The second it goes into a drawer, that's gone.
Elizabeth's always like, I always got to pull out fruits or vegetables and put them on the counter for you to eat them. Yeah, if I don't see it, right, I'm not eating. Yeah,
totally. Do you know how many sweaters I've been like, oh fuck, that's where that sweater was. I folded it and put it into a drawer. It was gone. Bills, forget it. If the bill is not sitting on the counter, that bill is gone. If it's not on my desk, if it is in a drawer, it is gone. And I have tried my entire life. So even in college, desks and all of these things like that, and I can live with piles. It doesn't stress me, where there's I know a lot of women that are like, oh my God, I hate piles. I hate anything out. Even if the blender goes underneath the cabinet, I'll shake my shake instead of blending it, because I'm like, oh, I forget about it. And it's not always fun, but it is what it is.
It's understanding.
Yeah. Right. I understand that's how I am. So I don't beat myself up about it,
and play to it.
Yes.
Not play against it.
Right. But that's also where relationships and partnerships come in. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a partner that doesn't understand that and it doesn't live like that, that's where arguments and people say, oh, attention deficit people are so difficult to live with. No, they just have a certain way that they have to function. And for others, if it's not
and we can say the opposite way too, right? Somebody who doesn't have ADHD is hard to live with, right? It's the understanding. Okay. Obviously Dan doesn't have it. Now you understand, you understand what, how his brain works and what he needs. He understands, if you don't have that, that's when you're butting heads, right?
Yep.
Elizabeth and I both have it. We're we have 7,322 projects going on at once.
Right.
But we understand it, right? So it goes back to the understanding, the relatability. If you don't understand yourself, how's your spouse supposed to understand you?
Yep.
And you talked about, it's, someone with anxiety, they have piles, right? Okay, if is fine with them, but does their significant other understand it?
Right. So if they put the pile away, does that fuck the other person up? Right. So it has to be like, that's where the understanding and the communication, but communication where you're not just talking, you're also understanding the person on the other side is understanding what you're saying. That's what communication is.
And you got to understand yourself before you can understand. And that's what all this is that's why we talk about it. Is, you can advocate for your kid if you understand them. ODD doesn't come into play if you understand them.
1,000,000,000%. So double check that. This is where I want to. I'm going to leave it at that. we could go on, and we're not going to. So thank you for listening to another episode of Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed, the attention deficit episode. So if you have questions on this or want more answers, reach out because we're experts because we live it every day. So don't forget to like, rate, review, and share. You don't know who needs to hear this.